Afternoon, folks. Welcome back to Three's In. Bobo here. So this afternoon, I want to start off talking a little bit about EPs, emergency procedures. We all have them. We're all going to get them. It's just part of the game we're in. The thing I want to talk about with respect to EPs is how you handle yourself during an emergency procedure, and it takes a lot of forethought, if you will. I kind of approached it as, well, would you look at that? I had a couple engine failures during my time in 38s, and every time I thought to myself, well, would you look at that? And it gave me an extra moment to pause and consider what I was going to do before I launched off into doing what I was going to do. Because if I did that, what I was going to do would probably be wrong. Now, they taught us in undergraduate pilot training, UPT, if you have an EP, first thing you do is you reach up with your left hand and you wind the clock. When I got to the airlines, they taught us to take our left hand and put it down underneath our left thigh, because that way we'd only screw up half the switches as we went through the whole thing. Made sense to me, made a point to me. At any rate, the point being is, lend some thought to what you're dealing with, lend some thought to your training, and then systematically go through your steps. And this is where chair flying comes in. You can chair fly an EP without having to get in a simulator or in the aircraft and pretty well have a good handle on it. And that's what I want to do this afternoon, is take you through a T-38 mission on a simulated single engine failure just after takeoff. That's the way we'd practice some heavyweight, because heavyweight would be the most challenging you'd have to do if you lost an engine in a 38. Okay, so for today's scenario, we're going to be taking off on runway 17 Center at Vance Air Force Base. If you've changed the numbers on that, adjust the video accordingly. Don't get shot in the head with it, okay? Okay, so we line up on 17 Center. It's a nice sunny day. A bit cool. Winds are 210 at 15, gusting to 25. They are always 210, 15, gusting to 25 in Vance. That's the way God made Vance, okay? So you get airborne, get your gear and your flaps. Now, you've been briefed as a student that you're going to have a simulated single engine right after takeoff. It's a regulation that the instructor has to brief the student on EPs that they're going to give them like this. Okay, the other thing you know from reading your book is they can't give it to you below 500 feet. So as you approach 500 feet, guess what? You're going to have an engine failure. It's just the nature of the game. Now, if you're taking off on runway 17 Center at Vance, downwind's off to your right side. So when you get airborne and you climb through 500 feet and you're going to make that right-hand turn, guess which engine they're going to fail? Yeah, your right one, because turning into the engine with the turning into the dead engine, simulated dead engine, it's going to give you the most challenge, if you will. Although, let me tell you, you can fly the 38 single engine with your feet flat on the floor. You don't need to worry about rudder because it's negligible. As you get more acclimated to the airplane, go ahead and play with it a little bit. But until in the early stages, you just fly the airplane. If you're so inclined to use rudder, go for it. Anyway, so you have an engine that's going to roll back. So first thing you want to do is ascertain what created the engine failure. It could be a lot of things. More often than not, a bird strike. Makes it really easy to discuss. So one of the quickest ways to determine it, if it's a bird strike, and the easiest ways is to take a whiff of things. If it smells like fried chicken, you probably hit a bird, okay? On any normal weekday, that fried chicken would be from KFC or Chick-fil-A. If it's on Sunday, it's just going to be a KFC chicken because Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays. Okay, a little bit of levity there. Okay, moving on. So you make the turn in the crosswind and you call up Vance departure and you declare an emergency. So that's the first thing you want to do while at the same time you're climbing up to pattern altitude. So you got a lot of things going on there, and you're kind of collecting your thoughts. Okay, I've had an EP. I can still fly the airplane. Got one throttle at idle, or 60% is what we used to do to simulate an engine failure. And the other one is in military power, or max if you need it. But more often than not, military power is fine. So you get that settled and you drive, I can't remember, 1, 2, 3 section lines down 3 miles, 2 miles from there. And you're going to turn crosswind at the traffic pattern altitude. Okay, as you make your turn to downwind, start getting into your mind about what created the engine failure. In this case, we are going to consider a bird strike. And the next thing you want to look at is, did the engine completely flame out? Did it seize? Do you think you can use it? So what you would do is perhaps take a throttle and kind of gingerly moving it up. And at that time, the instructor pilot will go bang, whiz, and whatever like that. It tells you, no, you're not going to be able to use it. You're going to have to bring it back. At that point, you need to decide what follow-up checklist you're going to need to use. Engine failure and flight checklist, single engine approach and landing checklist, and so forth. But it's imperative here to maintain aircraft control throughout the whole thing. So you get it up, and on downwind, get it trimmed for whatever speed you're going to use. Now my memory's kicking me. I can't remember if we use 280 or 240, but be that as it may, let's say we use 240. So get it trimmed up at 240 knots, and it's imperative you do this. Get it trimmed up almost to hands off if you can, and as you run your checklist, because you can do that and you won't have to worry about the airplane going off on its own somewhere. It will pretty well fly itself, and all you have to do is kind of monitor it. Okay. So then you're coming up to turn crosswind. You've got your checklist all ran, and your airspeed's computed. It's going to be fuel plus gas, probably around 177 knots. And so you set your bug there, and you're still at 240. So you make your turn to base, and then turn dogleg to final. Usually it'll roll you out about 9 mile final. Okay, so now you've still got things pretty well under control. You got your checklist all taken care of. You've got your airspeed under control and so forth. Now, you're at 240, so and your airspeed's going to be 177, let's say, for this conversation here. So what you do, when you roll out on final, you know where your 4 mile point is. That's where you have to call a gear check. And shortly after that 4 mile point, you're going to start downhill. So what I like to do is what I used to like to do. I still probably would like to do it if I could get back in at 38. But anyway, what I'd like to do is when I rolled out on final 9 miles, as I approach that 4 mile point, that's normally where we call a gear check, but we're going to delay that a little bit till we hit our normal descent point, a little bit after that, okay? But what I want to do is start bleeding off airspeed. I don't want to get into a position where I have to pull off bags of throttle to get my airspeed down. The gear and the flaps are going to do a lot of it for me. So let them work for you. Okay, so just crack the power a little bit. So you get that airspeed heading from 240 or 280, whatever you're flying at. Get it beginning to decay down toward 177. All right, say stabilize it at 220 or something like that when it comes up. The trick is just to use small increments of throttle during this. Graham's clock's still working. Okay, so you've got maybe a knob width, half a knob width from where the thing was set. Just bring it back and let the thing start, and stay up on your trim and keep trimming it, and just enjoy the ride. So now you're approaching your descent point. Put your gear down and your flaps to 60. Okay, so again, crack your power a little bit, but you shouldn't have to, because the gear and the flaps are going to start bleeding off the airspeed anyway. Okay, but just keep an eye on it. As you see that coming down to 190, 192, 195, somewhere in there, start to add the power back in, because what you want to do is try to stabilize that at 177 if you can. I used to like to get that final approach airspeed nailed about a half a mile before my descent point. Because then, if I get that all trimmed up, say let's stay with 177, I get that all trimmed up at 177, throttle's good, 3 green flaps, they're all good, and we're just having a nice time here. Smells like chicken, okay. And then you hit that descent point, all you have to do is take that throttle and pull it off, maybe a knob width, I don't know. I have forgotten some things, anyway. But pull it off a little bit, hold the same attitude, and when you pull it off, that airplane's just going to start to come down like that. And it's going to come down very nice. And so once it starts to come down, maybe add a little power. So now all you're doing is runway, airspeed, runway, airspeed. Runway, you're looking at your aim point, airspeed, aim point, airspeed. And when you make throttle adjustments, just make very fine throttle adjustments. The thing you don't want to do is go to mill power, to idle, to mill power, to oh Jesus, give me a break. I mean, you're asking for problems, because the smaller you can keep your throttle movements at that point, the easier it is to control the aircraft. If you're adding bags of throttle, okay, it's going to sit there, you're going to get nervous about it and so forth. And then you'll see the airspeed starting to shoot up. Now you got to pull it back to idle. Oh, good Lord, it's like, I can't use that analogy. This is for children. Okay. So anyway, just use small throttle increments. As you come into the overrun, check your airspeed one more time. You're on speed. Now, this is where finesse comes in. And I had students that could do this. You got the airplane all trimmed up. You're at 177. Take the throttle back about a throttle width. The throttle about a knob width, if you will. And what happens is when you take that thing back about a knob width, you're still holding the airplane, you'll see the tail start to drop. The tail end start to drop. When that drops, your airspeed is going to start to drop off, and you're going to cross the threshold about 10 knots below your final approach airspeed. That's fine, because you're getting down near the runway anyway. And then once you see the threshold markers go by, the first set of runway markers, then just slowly ease the power back. You got the nose coming up anyway, and then all you do is just transition into the flare. Touchdown on speed, allow yourself 0.5 of a second, half a second, to really appreciate the good work you did. Lower the nose, take both throttles, add them, because we use both throttles for the go-around, and off you go for your touch and go. It's, in actuality, just about that simple. And as I remember it, keep in mind, I haven't flown a 38 operationally since July 1988. But be that as it may, I don't think I'm far off here. Now, one last comment on this. In January 1988, I had a check ride from a fellow named Bill Henning. Bill Henning was the 38 side chief in Stanival. And I knew Bill, but I didn't know him that well. He had come over from Columbus, and then I had seen him in and out of the squadron. I was in another squadron at the time. And then 6 months prior to when I actually retired, they moved me into a special position. I was special assistant to the DO number 2. Number 1 was Byron Allen, and I was his assistant, I guess. So I was a co-assistant. Anyway, so I knew who Bill Henning was, and he was in Stanival. He's a good guy, and I liked the man. And as it turned out, I drew him for my last contact check in the Air Force. And I sat down with Bill for the briefing prior to flying. And I told him, this morning we're going to fly, begin the ride with a simulated single engine. Now, on this particular check ride, he wanted me to take one maneuver and brief it as I would a UPT student. So I did. And essentially, I gave him the same briefing I just gave you. And God, it warms my heart. I hope this thing can somehow find Bill Henning, because I have very fond memories of him. When I finished, we went out and flew the ride. And the ride went just as briefed. Typically they will. If you brief the mission very well, it's going to go very well. If you give it a crummy briefing, I don't even be around. But anyway, we got back to the flight room. We started debriefing. He said, before I start, Colonel Holliker, he said, that briefing you gave on the single engine approach and landing, he said, I was so mesmerized by what you were saying. He said, I was just so excited to fly the damn thing. He said, that was so much fun. And it went just like you briefed. And that's the whole object of this in student training. Well, in anything, fly the missions as you brief them. That allows you to handle things that kind of don't go normal, if you will. But at any rate, EPs, yeah, they're going to happen to you. Keep your head about you and just revert back to how you've been trained, and things are going to go very well. You actually sit back and kind of enjoy them. It kind of breaks the monotony of the same thing day in and day out. I don't really encourage you to go out seeking emergency procedures, but when they do occur, at least you're prepared for them, and I guess that's my point. So with that, this is Bobo wishing everybody a happy holiday season, and thanks for tuning in. This is Bobo Base Gear. Stop.